Hey, folks, welcome into the BN Cubs podcast. I'm Brett Taylor. That's Michael Cerami talking Cubs thanks to Ankin Law, 312-6 million. Injury law made personal. Got that little pep in the step. You know why? You know why, Michael? Because Cubs clinched. Cubs clinched. And I'm going to wear this for the rest of the pod. For those who don't have the joy of watching on video, popped on the rally bucket. And when I say the rally bucket, I mean, it is the rally bucket. If you remember it was 2015 when the Cubs were having a very successful second half, a lot of comeback wins, some walk-offs, and some Jonathan Herrera-led celebrations. There was a bubblegum bucket that there's a picture, I think, of Starlin Castro wearing it. Anyway, that was just sort of, it became this thing, right? And the next year, as part of the blogathon, the Cubs sent me the bucket to wear for the blogathon. So I've kept it ever since. So I'm wearing it on my head right now because I haven't had occasion to do this like in a real way for 8 years, which was the year after I got it. So I really haven't had a chance to do this. So that's where we're going to start this is obviously the Cubs clinched with the sweep at Pittsburgh, and it feels very different than 2020 because 2020 pandemic season just didn't have that normal feel to it. And then 2018, the Cubs did clinch a playoff spot in mid-September, but they were trying to hold on to the NL Central. And so they didn't do a celebration, and it wasn't really a clinch. And so then they officially got their wild card spot when they lost game 163 to the Brewers. Right. So we have not really had this moment in 8 years.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Also, I feel like these moments never happen at Wrigley, even when they did happen. I'm trying to remember, but it feels like every time we've clinched anything, it's been
other than
was the NLCS game that Kyle Hendricks pitched against.
That was at Wrigley.
That was a great one, that was obviously.
Just to pause on that, like obviously winning it all at Wrigley would have been, that almost goes without saying, but like to have the clinching game to go to the World Series at Wrigley was like so perfect because not to forget, obviously the 108 years was the big drought of winning it all, but the Cubs hadn't been to the World Series in 71 years. And so it was like
1945, right?
Yeah. It was that explosion of like, oh my God.
And there's going to be a Cubs Tigers rematch World Series this year from 1945. So that would be fun.
I mean, did the Cubs win that series? Not that World
Series. I was like, no.
Famously, they did not. No, the Tiger series earlier this year.
I can't look at you with this bucket on here.
This is how it's going to be, man.
I wish you guys, if you're not watching, you need to go find the YouTube clips. He is wearing a bucket on his head.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fit like appropriate. It doesn't look right.
Place. How did I do this for 35 hours? I wore this thing for 35 hours, I think, that year.
I don't know. You're kind of insane. And I'm not like trying to, every now and then I'm like, you could probably do like 36 hours and people would be like, and you're like, nope, gotta be 40. Okay.
And I think I did 41 or 42 one of the years because I like sort of peaked at 40, and that doesn't change much on the clock. So I'll probably stick at 40. But yeah, like when I wore this bucket hat for the blogathon, when I was finally done, woke up the next day and I had a line of like acne and just horrible stuff like going straight across my forehead because this had been pressed on it for 34 hours.
I bet.
So let's see where
what were you saying? Did they win what series?
Oh yeah, when they played the Tigers earlier this year in Detroit. Remember, it was like they played Schoolville really close.
Yeah,
that was the Ben Brown start that was really good. I can't remember.
I think they lost that game because even though Ben Brown
did lose that game, and remember it was like Seiya one more foot and it would have been a home run and they would have won that one. I just can't remember what happened in the other two games in that series. Not that it would matter for matchup purposes, but it is certainly plausible that could be. Of course, the Cubs. So let's get into what that process would look like. So what the Cubs clinched is a wild card spot. It is still theoretically possible. They could win the NL Central and get a bye through the wild card round. That's still on the table. What I find interesting is the Cubs' magic number to clinch the top wild card spot, which is the one that gets to host the games for the wild card series, is 6. Do you know what the Brewers' magic number is for the Cubs in the Central? It's also 6. So
yeah, because I read the bullets every morning, just like a good U.S. citizen, member of the city of Chicago. I read the morning Cubs bullets, and I learned that fact.
But like, what it's funny is, let me ask you, which do you think is, as a Cubs fan, are you like, I don't know, the Padres might come back?
Yeah.
And then conversely, you're like, well, the Cubs have no chance against the Brewers.
That was precisely my reaction. And then even after having the self-awareness to be like, oh, well, that's a silly thing to think, I went, no, I still believe it.
Yeah, I still believe
the Padres are definitely going to come back, and the Cubs definitely have no chance of catching the Brewers.
And we could look at the schedule and the matchups and like come up with an argument of why one is more plausible than the other. But
I know, but
fundamentally, it's really not. They're the same. And what's 95% likely to happen is the Cubs will take that top wild card spot. The Padres will take that number 2 wildcard spot. And so the Cubs will be hosting the Padres in a little under 2 weeks at Wrigley Field for the start of the wildcard series.
Which actually starts September 30th, which is very frustrating to me, just to my sense of
October,
what's right in the world. Come on. No. Yeah.
Just wait a day.
And some years the regular season pours into October. And we made the joke like, oh, they're playing October baseball.
Cubs are undefeated in October. I remember dropping that one a few times.
It sucks.
I think we won't get that much anymore now that they've really committed to the March start. It used to be.
Can I tell you why I'm feeling so like great about the Cubs right now? I want to see if this carries any weight for you. So it kind of, I've been like riding the Cubs roller coaster emotionally lately, as anyone who's reading the vibes are back post to, oh no, it's all terrible again, article. And now with some time, I'm thinking of a few things here. And basically what I'm getting at is what's making this season increasingly memorable. Okay. And why that's, landing with me so much. So at the outset, Cubs make a big trade for Kyle Tucker, whatever. That's kind of a narrative on the year. Sammy Sosa is welcomed back into the Cubs family, right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty big moment for the year. Ryan Sandberg passes away, terribly sad, but memorable thing that has happened this year, something to sort of rally Cubs fans around, united us all. Derek Lee and Sammy Sosa both get enshrined and have their moments. Okay, cool. All that is fine. Here's where things then more recently have changed. Nico Horner fighting for a batting title is fun. That is awesome. That's a very cool thing. Cade Horton fighting for and leading the charge for Rookie of the Year is fun. That's an awesome thing. This is now the year of both of those things happening. Yeah. PCA being 1 homer away from 30-30, and he's got a good chance to do it. Is fun. That is another thing. These are like these moments where in 2015 and 2016, there were these things that outside of the Cubs, collective team success made those individual seasons memorable. Like the bucket you're wearing on your head 10 years later being a thing, that's a small one, but Jake Arrieta or Kyle Hendricks running away with the ERA title in 2016, Cy Young races Rookie of the Year, MVP, like these individual player achievements, combined with Sosa, Sandberg, Lee, it's turning this year into what I wanted it to be, what we had been missing, even in 2023, and 2024, when they were like close to playoff spots in September and still kind of fighting for it one way or another. There was nothing going on. There was nothing. There was like small, insignificant. Yeah, they're playing like just well enough to maybe like, this is like got some of that juju. And the only thing that's missing is, unfortunately, and it's just not going to happen, is the Brewers went on a crazy run, and now we can't win the division as part of like that. It's very unlikely, that celebration, but like all of these other things are making me be like, man, maybe this is one of those seasons and I need to stop, resting all of my attention or desire for something greater on like they didn't win the division, because there's all these great stuff, all these great things happening, and like Nico and Cade Horton specifically the last month have really made that like special.
So that is all such a good observation, and I'm going to see if I can articulate this the way it was like popping through my mind as you were talking through that when we think of sports stories that culminate in a championship, the version of it either that we like to be able to tell or that will necessarily always come together because the teams that win, good things will have had to have happened. But the version that we like is not just, oh, that team was good and they won a championship. That was a year where all of these things happened as part of one bigger story. And I think it's interesting because, again, maybe we would have created that same sense any other year that the Cubs were good enough to be in contention by late September. But it does feel like, especially increasingly, that this is a season that it's almost like you want a season that even if they don't win it all, you'd be able to look back and be like, oh, remember that was the year when this happened and this happened and this happened.
Mm-hmm.
Not because you want that as a separate, memory to put in your memory bank, but because that just feels like the kind of year that ends up being special in a championship. And, but let me continue this thought for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Could just be hindsighting and the stories that we tell ourselves. But like as 2015 was playing out, okay, Cubs had turned the corner. And as folks may remember, the second half in particular, the Cubs were the team that went absolute bananas. They went ham in the second half, went from completely not in the conversation for a postseason spot to the third best record in the National League. They ended up getting the wild card because the Cardinals and Pirates both had over 100 wins or whatever that year. It was ridiculous. But it was deeply enjoyable. Loved that season, including right through to the end, even getting swept in the NLCS. Like it all just felt like a great package of memories. But as it was playing out, it didn't feel like that it was going to be a squandering of all those great stories if the Cubs didn't win it all. Like it just didn't have that feel. 2016, by contrast, of course, spring training, we were talking about what a potential juggernaut this team was, and that, if they didn't make a deep run, that was going to be wildly disappointing. And that didn't take away from when they finally won it. It still ended up being a season with all of these like things that we remember about it, these stories that we tell that buttress the experience. And I'm wondering for this season, I will tell you in all candor, as the season is playing out, it didn't feel like a championship season. Like it felt like a very competitive, good, enjoyable season, but it felt like one where the Cubs were going to make the playoffs. I was going to love the run that they went on. It was probably going to end somewhere shy of a championship. And I was going to feel about it like I felt about 2015, that it was like, that was just a good, enjoyable year that ended the way it was supposed to. And I'm wondering, as part of your point about the way it's been evolving and more of these like special individual player things and memories and moments have been emerging, is that changing at all for you? Are you starting to feel that feeling of like, actually, this should be a championship team?
Well,
I hope I'm making that point clear.
I totally take your point. I don't know if I won't speak for all the listeners, but I will say that there's this. I didn't go into the season thinking the same way as you. I wasn't thinking this is 2016, right? I thought they were going to be good, should definitely win the division, and in which case, they're not going to. Like that sucks. I will say that.
But they are playing like a division winning team, just for the record.
Yeah, I know. Whatever. I'm sick of making that distinction. Win your division, then your division winning team. I know, but sorry, it's not good enough. But that's not even the point I'm trying to make. What I was gonna say is there was definitely a moment at like end of May, when the Cubs were like at their absolute best. I think that was around the end of May, right? But or was it June? I don't know. You know what I'm talking
about. It was
about.
like in that third week of May, like when
like
really
PCA was hitting a homer every other game. Seiya Suzuki had a crazy pace.
Justin
Whatever.
Turner's
you guys
walking
all know
off the Marlins. Like that's the moment
when
I think
everything was going perfectly. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the moment I'm talking about when I went, oh, well, maybe this is a really great team. And then it turned into like, okay, no, it's just a good team. But now here's where I'm coming back around again. And this is basically for everyone listening. This is how Brett and I do a lot of this. We sort of like, we create narratives, talk it out with each other, and then be like, is this the way we want to think about this and talk about this? And anyway, I found that meta thought interesting for a second. But we talked about this the other day, is that the reason I think that this could be a championship team again is that there isn't a championship team in baseball this year. Yeah. And we've, you could say the Brewers all you want. They're not. They are the best. They have the best record in baseball. The Tigers have been playing really well. The Dodgers on paper should be better. The Phillies are an impressive and scary team, and so on and so forth. And you can talk about whoever you want, but there's definitely not the whatever year it was, Dodgers team that won 106.
Dodgers last year.
Or the Giants who, when they won 107 games or whatever it was, like there's not one of those teams this year. There is not. The Brewers are not one of those teams, even when they will finish the season with the most wins. They're not one of those teams. Like they're just not. I'm not taking away anything from them. No one has given the Brewers more credit than us because of what they've been able to do, despite not look like over the years. We are
year
the most
after year after year
humbled by their success of anyone. Okay.
We hate them because we ain't them.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. And so that said, now I do think there's really no reason the Cubs can't win the World Series this year, because any one team they face, I feel is the Cubs are in the, the top tier of could be the best team to come out on top this year, even with anyone else. Now, a huge, and this is probably where we should pivot the conversation to a little bit, a huge detracting factor to that statement is that Matthew Boyd is quickly becoming a October rotation playoff problem. Just
question mark at least.
Yeah, question mark at least. Over his last 10 starts, which dates back to July 28th, he has a 5.34 ERA, 4.55 FIP. That's 55.2 innings. So not even 6 innings a start. And he has allowed 4 or more earned runs in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of those 10. There's a few good starts in there, but even the ones where he didn't allow 4 or 5 earned runs, they were shorter. It's not good right now. And we're going to get into like the playoff rotation and the lineups and stuff at the end of this pod. That'll be like sort of part of the game for those that listen. So I don't want to dive too deep into that, but if you could narrow your, analytical focus on Matthew Boyd right now, what's going on? Because I don't know. I have to look into it, but have you recognized what the problem is or what is?
So yeah, I have 2 overarching concerns about what's happening with Matthew Boyd. One of which is the workload in relation to the performance, right? This is a guy he's not thrown this much in years and years and years, and particularly the last several years. And so it isn't as if a bad 10 start stretch you could look at and be like, well, that's just sort of, thing that it concerns me because of when it's happening in relation to his season. Right. And then the second thing is related, but distinct. So that first part is about his own wearing down. The other part is this is a guy who he didn't reinvent himself going into last year with the Guardians, but he did make some tweaks to what he did on a performance level. And now there is well over a year's worth of a body of work for teams to kind of get a better sense of how to approach him and how to, manage what he's able to do. And that's a little bit of a concern. As far as what you notice, I mean, the command had been, good stuff, right? Early in the season, he was a good stuff guy, but a lot of what it was is just superlative command. especially north-south. Like he was just executing off the plate, high and low, very well, and making guys look silly because they just weren't clocking, especially the breaking pitch against the fastball. They just weren't clocking it well. And I feel like I'd have to go back and look. It's always a risk when you shoot from the cuff. I feel like I've seen a lot more belt high stuff, not like meatballs necessarily, because inside outside, he's still doing reasonably well, but belt high. And that's where you are going to get more damage. And then he'll have these spurts where he's like just wild. And we have not seen that from him. It started with that Brewers game in Milwaukee.
It right, did. I'm just noticing something. I might have to write this up. For those that are listening, the wildness, like sure, sometimes like walks, that could manifest in walks, but that's not the way that I think that this is becoming an issue. Just as a quick stat, his O swing rate for the season is 28.5%. Okay. The rate at which the batters are swinging at pitches out of the zone. His last game, 16.1, 21.6, 20.5, 21.2, his last 4 games. Against the Brewers, that game, 15.6. Yeah. So and for what it's worth, it was significantly higher before it started falling off.
It would have been in the 30s before he started to fall off.
And so that is, when your command isn't perfect, you're not setting batters up to then chase and offer at the bad pitches. And those are pitches that they either swing and miss at, or to make weak contact on. And that might be a thing right there.
And he was a big time. How do you describe this? So here to distinguish him. So Cade Horton is I'm just going to throw my pitches and each pitch is going to be competitive, right? They're all competitive, but each pitch is going to be targeted toward generating out. Matthew Boyd was setting guys up. Like there was so much pitchability in there where he's executing this pitch off of this pitch, off of this pitch, off of this at bat. And when it works, it makes him look as successful as he did. When it doesn't, it's going to look like what Michael's pointing out is a whole lot less chase, a whole lot more hittable pitches, and a lot more walks.
And so, again, I don't want to get too far into it because we'll talk about it in a second, but I will say that when it comes to who starts or pitches when, if he's healthy, and the Cubs advance, let's say in the playoffs, he's going to make a playoff start.
Sure.
There's very little
yes
opportunity otherwise. And the one thing that I think is a sort of saving grace is that, as we've seen, even over this rough stretch, he has had a few gems. It's like 3 bad starts and then like 1 7 innings, 2 earned runs. It's like pitchers are weird, man. I've been saying this forever. Anytime the Cubs play a former ace, like a guy who's way older, Adam Wainwright was like the first player that really taught me this lesson. But it could be anyone, Scherzer, Verlander, even guys who are not having good seasons, but they were once an ace. They always retain this ability to, for one night, be the guy they were, because their arm feels great. Their feel is just right. The temperature is how it, and then they have the wealth of knowledge and experience that comes along with pitching for so long. So when you talk about the importance of a single game, like the variance with Matthew Boyd might be high and the risk might be so extreme that it makes you nervous, but he also carries the opportunity or the chance to do something that I don't think Javier Assad or Colin Ray could do at all, which is like shut down a lineup for 7 innings or 8 innings. Like they just wouldn't do that probably. And so that's why there's a little bit more of like, I still want him to pitch in the playoffs. And guess what? He's going to.
Yeah. Another saving, and not to bleed into the later conversation, but another saving grace for Boyd getting starts in the postseason is the Cubs are going to have Javier Assad, Aaron Savali, Michael Soroka, Colin Ray, all these righties in the bullpen, presumably available to take over quickly in what might be a lineup advantage situation in the 3rd inning or whatever, because they can give you multiple innings and you have extra off days. So that ability to be extra aggressive with the pulls is actually probably going to benefit not only the Cubs, but maybe Boyd himself, because it's going to be like, hey, Matt, we love you. You're awesome. We want you to go 7 innings, but like, you know what? let's maybe just make sure these first 3 innings are like really great.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's a very Craig Counsell way of approaching it too. He also, the concerning part is I think again, I'm shooting from the hip, but I've watched all these games. Most of Boyd's bad games have been bad starts to the game. And then he settles in and throws, another 3 or 4 innings for like one run. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's a bummer. And you know what? Actually, this was not to go negative on such a good day, but I will say this because this requires being stated just for the record, and then we could, leave it or whatever. You could take the bait. When the Cubs didn't acquire a surefire starting pitcher at the deadline because the prices were exorbitantly high, I get it. That's all true. Whatever, it is what it is. There was a lot of people saying like, well, including us, like, look at how good the rotation's been since then. And that's fair and that's true. However, that required Cade Horton to go on a run that no one was anticipating and is now resulting in a bit of an issue with Jameson Taillon only just coming back. He looks good and hopefully that's fine. And Matthew Boyd not looking like the guy he was. And so, okay, are we back to saying, okay, maybe it would have been nice to have another guy? Like, I'm just saying it's not the same storyline it was 4 weeks ago when it was like, oh my God, good thing we didn't waste any resources on whoever. And I mean, set aside the acquisition cost is a real thing.
But. Well, and the ... to that is that the guys who were on the table, a lot of them have sucked or gotten hurt.
Yeah, no, for really sure.
I don't know that there's anyone who is in the tier that you're talking about that would have changed, that has been great. So I think, but,
even Adrian Hauser, who was like, I was like, why don't you at least get him? Has not been very good since,
except against the Cubs. He was good.
I mean, he was twice. He pitched against the Cubs well, but he's the only guy that was like, you couldn't even get him, and then he actually hasn't been very good.
Who's actually been the best since? There's 2 guys actually that have been the best since the trade deadline who were in rumors, didn't get traded. It's Gallen and Verlander. They've both been fantastic, which. Unique circumstances
Gallen,
for each.
That the opportunity was there.
You just would have had to pay you would have had to pay a level commensurate with who you hoped he could be, not how he was like the worst starting pitcher in baseball in the first half.
I know.
But yeah, as we sit here today and you're looking at a 3-game series, having a surefire, having one more surefire starter in that mix would feel a lot better.
I mean, I will tell you the one thing that I am excited about. Again, we will get into this. We could do this in a second. Is just Cade Horton is going to get a playoff start at some point, and because it'd be absurd not to, and he's going to be untethered, I think.
Yeah.
Because you just let him go, right? I mean,
you tell him, hey, we know you have been pitching a certain way so far because you knew you only had like 60 to 80 pitches. Just keep doing that, but we're going to give you 100.
Yeah. I wouldn't even tell him. I would say, we're not changing anything, and then just change it.
Yeah. And then just change it. Yeah.
Okay. Before we do the game though, I want to, we got to do some love for 2 guys in particular.
Because can I do one? Cause you're going to, this is one of the ones, but I want to take it because I thought it was so cool that the final out went to Ian Happ, and he caught it, longest tenured Cub, the Cub who bridges a lot of that time period from the last group to the current one, who didn't get to participate in the championship run in 2016. And when he was being interviewed on the field yesterday about like the longest tenured Cub, you get to catch the ball, and like you could see the moment where it caught him, and he got a little emotional. And like I was watching that, and I was like, oh, I'm getting a little emotional thinking just about how special and satisfying that has to be, that now he gets to help lead this charge of this group, particularly in light of him doing what he always does. Is he's been great in the second half. He's been carrying this offense. And now you look at his numbers and it's like exactly Ian Happ.
Yeah. I mean, not only that, I'll take that one step further. Since in the second half of the season, he's slashing 272, 385, 522, which is a 152 weighted runs created plus, which is like, that's as good as a star player, right? For him to catch that ball was fitting, but also I was conjuring this image of the fact that it happened yesterday, that ball being caught clinched yesterday, in large part because of Ian carrying the offense for the last few weeks while Seiya Suzuki, Kyle Tucker, and PCA and Michael Busch were nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Like maybe the Cubs would have clinched anyway, and maybe it would have been a week from now and whatever. They have been winning largely on his back because he has been doing incredible things. And for the season as a whole, he's got a higher weighted runs created plus than he does for his career. And he has an outside shot of finishing with the most homers in a season and the most runs scored for himself in a season. And even the highest weighted runs created plus he would in a full year if 2020 doesn't count. So it's just been an incredible second half for him and really impressive, really well-deserved. And he is, you know, like you said, he's not an emotional guy. And when he got a little emotional, it was kind of like, oh, okay. It was kind of like seeing Kyle Hendricks like let out a roar. You're like, what's going on here? Like This is, or a smile. It'd still be nice to see Ian Happ smile at one point, but you know, we could save that for, you know, maybe if there's a game in November. The other guy, of course, is Nico Horner, who has just been absolutely absurd in all the best ways possible. His second half of the season, he's batting 337, 389, 444. That's a 136 rated runs created plus. But I mean, watching a guy hit 337 for it's with, and to do it with line drive after line drive after line drive.
It doesn't strike out ever.
Doesn't strike out ever. And he's actually hitting for power over this stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so awesome. It is so awesome to watch him play baseball. He is so incredibly talented on defense, on right now, offensively, the way he runs the bases, how hard he plays. He's got by far his best weighted runs created plus for a season and his most overall WAR. I mean, this is a career year and he's striking out 7% of the time on the season as a whole, just 6.2% in the second half with a 7.5% walk rate. He's walking more than he's striking out. It's Nico Horner. And it's awesome.
Yeah. The ability to keep reducing his strikeout rate concurrent with getting back to really great line drive approach. Not, you know, he's not just like dinking and dunking everything.
No.
Is what's really so impressive and fun to watch. A couple notes on him. One, kudos to the Cubs for the mini extension they signed, which got them one more year. So they have him for next year too. That's looking pretty great right now. And then
what do you think he would have signed for if he was a free agent?
Gosh, I mean, can you imagine?
I mean,
he would have, the debate would have been how much value is coming from defense and especially at second base. Can he play shortstop again? Can he play it at an elite level? But I mean, you know, 9 figures would be very much in the conversation. Yeah. The other thing just to note is, you know, we don't highlight batting average very often, and that's for good reason. It is in isolation, not a particularly good predictive metric at all. Evaluative metric, not great either, because if you don't have any context, you know, there's a pretty huge difference between the dudes who are walking and hitting for power and the ones who aren't. But that doesn't mean that it isn't important. And it's particularly, I think, valuable to note its importance when you're talking about a profile like Horner's, where he will always derive most of his offensive production from batting average. Like that's going to be the predicate for his performance. And so it is important for him to have an elevated batting average. And so knowing that about him, it makes it all the more fun for him to be chasing a batting title. And for those who don't know, as we sit here on Thursday, so he's at 303. Trey Turner leads at 305, but Trey Turner is on the shelf with a hamstring injury. So it's kind of Nico's to lose if he can just, you know, keep knocking out the hits.
Is there any way that Turner can become unqualified?
I don't think so. I haven't done the math, but the write-ups, I've seen multiple write-ups now discussing the race, and none of them accounted for being like, oh, he might come up short. I think he still has, because until this injury, I don't think he missed much time this year. So
that sounds right. And we've said this 1,000 times. I mean, the stupid batting average conversation is so dumb, but I'm going to sidestep the more important conversation, which is to say any one stat in isolation is a horrible thing to point out for someone. It doesn't. There was a time when you could say Jason Hayward's hard hit rate is like 50%. Yeah. And what was his launch angle ground ball rate? So don't tell me. I mean, even advanced stats have limitations, and it's knowing the context of when to use them and how. But setting that entirely aside, there is also a threshold beyond which any one stat can then circle back around to being like, no, and this is actually kind of crazy. And I would say hitting 337, hitting almost 340 in the second half of the year is approaching that for batting average.
Yeah, like it's its own good thing.
Yeah, that's not like hitting 305 where it's like, okay, Nick Madrigal can hit 305. Like he'll hit 305, 290, 305. You know what I mean? Or like whatever.
Couple sack
you know what I'm saying? Like the 305 part, like that's not what I mean when I'm like, oh, good, he's hitting 300. No, hitting 337, 340 for 2.5 months is incredible. That is that is itself a fundamentally good thing that will help your team win baseball games. It is accounted for in weighted runs created plus. Like I'm not, that matters. Yeah. That's in there, but it is still very impressive and still very cool. And he deserves a lot of credit. Him and Ian, they're batting like 2-3 a lot lately while Seiya and Tucker have been gone. And it is, just all the credit in the world to them. 2 of the longer tenured Cubs, 2 of the leaders on the Cubs, really took this team away from Kyle Tucker, Seiya Suzuki, and PCA and made it their team for the last month and a half. And that's what happened. I mean, that's what is going on. They are the ones who have been winning these games along with, Cade Horton and Brad Keller. Those are like the 4 guys that have made this clinch happen on, in the middle of September as opposed to at the end of September. You good to transition to the game?
Yep.
All right. This week's game is brought to you by Feltco, the home renewal experts. Bleacher Nation is proud to partner with Feltco. For almost 50 years, Feltco has been transforming Chicagoland homes with their windows, siding, doors, and roofing. Feltco is family owned and prides themselves on delighting their customers. With products made in the U.S. and designed specifically for the Midwest, Feltco offers the perfect balance of beauty and energy efficiency. I'm going to also take this moment really quick to let folks know there's going to be more announcements coming today, but since you're listening to this, it'll probably already be up at the site. There is a Bleacher Nation Bears podcast coming. It will launch next week. It's going to go after the games. So most often on Mondays, but if there's a game on Thursday, they'll drop it on a Friday and so on. And it's going to be hosted by Patrick Flowers, Luis Medina, and Matt Rooney. So keep an eye out for that. So setting that aside, this week's game, not so much a game, more of a conversation. I like using this time to just be like, let's have a talk that I want to have specifically this talk. So we could do that. There's a 3-game wildcard series coming up one way or another. Let's assume for the moment it's against the Padres. I have a few questions for you and you can handle them in any order. I'll just kind of dump it on you. Well, do you want to go one by one? Let's do one by one. If the wild card series started tomorrow and everyone was rested and healthy so they can set it up how they want, who's getting game 1, game 2, game 3 as your starters? That's the obvious answer. Easy, obvious first question.
Well, so broadly speaking, I'm not of the philosophy that you save, anyone, like you never look ahead at that 3rd game and say, well, that's who we would want in the deciding game. No, you play for today because 3 might not happen. And so I suppose I know what the argument is for not having Cade Horton start game 1. He's rookie, this pressure, But I think it'd be pretty hard to justify taking the guy who's been in the second half this season, not only the best pitcher in baseball, but the best pitcher in baseball in a very long time, and not giving him that ball in game 1. I think you just would be crazy. Why? Because he's suddenly going to feel too much pressure in the playoffs that he hasn't felt as he's trying to establish himself in the big leagues as a rookie. That's a lot of pressure. Okay. He's
also, how much pressure do you think there will be in game 2 if the Cubs lost the first game and they're on the precipice of elimination? That's probably more pressure.
Probably more pressure. So that one for me is easy.
So you're going Cade Horton game 1 starter.
Without a doubt. And I think what's interesting about when you do that, for a guy he's averaging about 5 innings a start because of the artificial restriction we were joking about earlier. And maybe that ends up happening again. But the nice thing is in the postseason, you do have, particularly for a 3-game series, right? You set a playoff roster that's 26 players. Well, you're not going to need 5 starting pitchers to make that. So you're going to have extra arms available anyway. And so I like that additional layer of comfort. We talked about it in relation to Boyd, but it's true for Horton too, that if you do sense, okay, young guy, he's feeling it a bit. He's given us 4. Let's move on. You can. And maybe that's when you deploy Matthew Boyd. We'll get to that in a moment. But so game 2, it's got to be Shota for me. And that's, again, I don't think that's controversial. He's the top 2 starter on this team. And, we know the story with Shota is if he's not giving up solo home runs, he's probably cruising. And that's just his deal. I particularly, we root for the wind maybe being favorable for his game at Wrigley. And maybe you look at the Farmer's Almanac that week and you're like, okay.
No, I think you pay for like the most incredibly expensive weather tracking. And I honestly don't think it's insane. First of all, I'm going to pause you there. My 1-2 are Cade Horton and Shota also. I don't think this would ever happen. And I also don't think it would be crazy to try to make the call closer to the game to say, is the wind going to be blowing out one of these days and not the other?
Well, particularly if it's out to left against a lineup full of righties that are, fly ball righties against Shota. I don't think that's crazy at all. I think what's crazy is like, the way weather's predicted, people always are like, oh, why do they always get it wrong? The further out you are, it's a confidence interval that's very wide of like, we got a 40% chance of the weather being like this. And then as the day gets closer, they get more information. They can narrow the band, and then get like an 80% confidence that it'll be like this. So that is to say, I think your likelihood the last time through the rotation, which is when you'd have to set this up, that you're going to know likely that the wind is going to be fundamentally different on this day from this day. It's probably pretty unlikely, especially in Chicago. But I do agree with you. If you could do that, you would absolutely do that. So game 3 is, I think, where it's tough. And I think it's where you're going to have to lean heavily on the bullpen regardless. I think the way things are looking right now, and we would have to talk about the matchup. We have to dig in a little deeper on the Padres lineup. I know sort of the broad contours, but I don't know how well they match up against Boyd's stuff versus Tyone's stuff. But I think I'd have to give it to Tyone right now. And I would do that in particular, or this is just me. I would have Boyd ready to pitch game 1.
Yep.
And I would
think
have
that's
him,
that's like a sound.
because I think he could handle it.
Yeah.
Like I think he could handle it. And I think it's a smart way to make sure you have him available for a series because he is still one of your best pitchers. But I just think it provides comfort for Horton. I think it provides comfort for Boyd. And I think it could help you. You're not saving the bullpen for the later 2 games, but it just might defray some of that usage in an effective way that you could, max it out, especially in game 3 when you might, it's no knock on Tyone because he has been very effective, but he's another guy where you may want to pull the plug after 3 or 4 innings. So
I'll tell you what, when Tyone came back the first time from his injury and threw those 6+ innings against the Brewers, I was like, what a dog. I mean, God, I loved him for that performance. It was so awesome. And it was kind of like, no, I know, like when he feels right, he could be great.
Yeah.
He really can. He's not, a 1 or a 2, but he's like, in my opinion, he's like the best 3. You know what I mean? Like when he's feeling great, like he is like the best 3 starter.
Do you know what
2 upside
compliment to him is? He is the pitcher on this staff that I have the most confidence is unaffected by a bad inning. Yeah. Like when he could have a 6-run horrible inning, but I would have just as much confidence in him the next inning as I would for any of his other starts. It's like it just truly doesn't seem to matter at all.
All right. Here's your next sort of question. You could handle this one of 2 ways. You could pretend Daniel Palencia is back, but I don't know if we know for sure what's going to happen there. I don't know what the latest even was. So
he is close to going to Iowa for a chance to pitch to see where things are. I mean, it's possible.
So imagine this scenario then, because I don't think this is necessarily likely to play out, but it's going to better serve the root of the question that I'm trying to get an answer out of you from is, let's say Cade Horton or Shota Imanaga goes 8 innings. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a 1-run ball game. And then the 9th inning comes up. Okay.
Yeah.
Is Brad Keller getting the ball, or is Andrew Kittredge, who has been closing, looks fine and has, I know they're not operating as though he's the closer, but they kind of are. Most of the specifics is like Keller's actually getting the hardest inning.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, how do you think that goes?
Gut says, I need to know where they are in the lineup, who's coming up.
Even if it's the last inning?
And even if it's the last inning, and the handedness. And here's why. If it's all righties and it's likely to be 5 righties in a row, not necessarily the toppiest group, give me Kittredge. That's what's been working. And that slider is just abusing righties.
Yeah.
Like they just cannot do anything with it. That's why he should have had 2 of them, but he got screwed out of a second immaculate inning. And then almost anything else, give me Keller. I'd have them both warming up because in that situation, there's nothing to lose. Just having them both ready. Now, do I think that's how it would actually play out? I don't know. Gut says Keller's getting that inning in this. If everything is the way you described it, I really think that's what's happening. And I wouldn't second guess that for a second, even if it went sideways. But I suppose my point is only, I really like the way those two have been used the last couple of weeks. I think it's been really
I do think it's
smart.
using their strengths really well in that you give Keller the tougher assignment on like a on paper basis. And then you give Kittredge sort of like you need to have the cojones to
right. Because he's been there before, he's like,
Yep.
he's done it before. He's not phased. I think the toughest question, and we can leave it because we don't know, is if Palencia comes back and he's throwing 100, it's like, I don't know. I really don't know what you do. And so I would completely punt on the question because I'll say, well,
I really hope that
I'll have more information
with some time to
show,
like 1 or 2 8th innings and then give him a save. Like then you could feel better. I will say, I know not everyone agrees because he had a really rough stretch. Maybe it was because of the injury. Maybe it was not. When he was healthy and effective, he was a dude. He was better than Keller by a lot from what I can see. That doesn't mean that is a fundamentally different pitcher than Brad Keller.
Yes.
And even though Brad Keller lost.
Peak of Palencia is if you're an opponent, you would much, much, much rather see peak Keller, who's been great, than peak Palencia in the 9th inning if you need a run. Because peak Palencia,
we just don't know if he'll be peak Palencia.
We don't know. And
once again, it's a good thing they didn't trade for a reliever. Well, they did. They got Kittredge and what's his name? So okay, fine.
And Rogers don't
he's
been mostly low leverage. All right, that's all I got.
I got 2 more questions. Sorry,
my boss.
Sorry. No, they're
the same my game. You're right. I can't act like I'm driving it.
I got 2 more. So let's say the Cubs are facing a right-handed starting pitcher. And Kyle Tucker, has come back for the final series of the regular season. And he goes 0 for the series, whatever.
Sure. Whatever.
Is there any way that Moises Ballesteros gets into a game, starts a game, excuse me.
Yeah.
Not even over Kyle Tucker specifically.
Okay. I thought you were going to say if it had to be between the two of them.
No, is there any version of Moises Ballesteros who looks pretty good?
Yeah. That's a good question. Like, essentially, if everyone's healthy and good to go, how would you incorporate?
And it's a righty pitcher is what I'm saying.
And it's righty pitcher. How would you incorporate him? Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I think there would be a part of me that would be inclined to sit Seiya and just at DH, just straight up switch them out
against the righty, right?
Against the righty. And Kyle Tucker, Kyle Tucker is one. I don't think there is any circumstance if he's healthy that I could justify not starting him in any game. I don't think you could justify that. Seiya is,
The storyline of sitting Kyle Tucker would be so that's not happening.
But with Seiya, because he'd had such a bad 3 months and like this illness, and like we'll see what happens. I think there's at least more of a justification there. But yeah, I could be talked into it.
And then lastly, if there is a left-handed starter that the Cubs face in the playoffs, a couple questions, but just I want general lineup thing. Like, is Nico Horner leading off for you? Who's playing first base? Where does PCA hitting? What are you doing? This is the final question. It's just, what are you doing against the left-handed starter with the Cubs lineup in a playoff game? So this is the game. So
I'll probably piss people off with one answer is I'm definitely starting Justin Turner. Not only because, I mean, he's been tremendously good against lefties, especially in the second half. And like, I want his bat in the lineup against a lefty. I don't love swapping out at first base, but one thing I would do in that situation is I'd be way more aggressive swapping Bush back into the game than Craig Counsell has tended to be. I think he would be in the postseason.
Yeah, I think so too. But what has been the delay there?
Basically, Turner would get 2 at bats, and even if the lefty was still in the game and it was getting to those middle innings, I might then make the switch. PCA, I think, you can't justify not starting him because of the defensive importance in a game like that. But you do have to, I think about, like you said, where you could justify having him in the lineup. And I think he's probably you're not going to want him in a spot that, fortunately, if you've got a lefty on the mound, you're having Seiya in there, you're having Carson Kelly in there, you're having Dansby hitting better against the lefties. So you have all these guys that are in that middle that you could justify bumping up. And Nico, yeah, sure, he can lead off against the lefty. That's fine.
I mean, he probably will, right?
Yeah, why not?
That's what they've kind of been doing. All right, so your conclusions there, for what it's worth, were going Cade Horton, Shota Imanaga, Jameson Taillon for the starts.
Yeah.
For a pure save, everyone's available, yada yada yada. It leans Kittredge, but like Keller is more likely to be the guy, and it's kind of it's much more matchup dependent. And then against righties, you'd consider Moises Ballesteros starting at DH instead of Seiya Suzuki.
Yeah.
And against a lefty, you are starting Justin Turner at first base, Nico leading off, and PCA moving down. Did I get that all right? Sure. Yeah, I think that's an article that we should probably write at some point.
Yeah.
There's a lot there, and I think a lot of it is very self-evident when you talk through it. But this isn't a Cubs team without moving parts. This isn't a bullpen without interchangeable pieces. And this isn't a rotation that has a very clear hierarchy that has existed throughout the season. The first half and second half have been very different. The rookie and the veteran make things complicated, and the injury for Taillon is a factor that you hope doesn't matter. But so that's why I think that there's a lot to that, and why I wanted to make it the game this week. But that's that.
I dig it. All right. Well, this is the BN Cubs podcast. We thank you all for, listening to us this season. It's not over. Of course, we'll keep on going.
Yeah, that was a real...
No, I just felt like a moment to say that because the Cubs have clinched. So it's like sort of, I don't know, on to the next phase.
I mean, people are saying they clinched because of our podcast existing.
I've heard that.
We have a 100% playoff hit rate
100%.
For the years that our podcast has existed. So
just dropping that out there for the Cubs in case they want to join our wonderful sponsor, Ankin Law, 312-6 million injury law made personal. Like that's Howard want to know for this podcast as well. So we thank you. I'm Brett Taylor. That's Michael Cerami. Read our stuff at Bleacher Nation. Stay tuned and check out your feeds for the BN Bears podcast, which is forthcoming if you want to check that out. And otherwise, we'll talk to you next week.